All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Performance Matters Podcast. I'm Matrix, and we are joined today by Steve Delaney. He is the head volleyball coach for the women's team at Brock University Badgers. I believe, what is that now? 3-time OUA champions? Is that correct?
3, yep.
Yeah, 3. Damn. Okay, cool. So we're lucky to have you on the podcast. So welcome to the show. So let's just kind of kick things off here. So how did you first get involved in coaching volleyball?
So obviously played for a long time, and then I moved to Burlington where there was a local club that was looking for coaches.
Yeah.
I had got involved in some recreational volleyball in the area, mainly on the beach side of it. And one of I guess the parents that was running the club kind of got to talking to me and had me come out and start coaching the Hurricanes 17U team at the time. So
Yeah.
that was 2015, I want to say. And I had done like as much as people think that men's volleyball, when you get past university and pro and all that, is kind of like an easy thing to do. I'd been running a club team for the better part of like 10 to 15 years and dealing with managing players and booking tournaments and all that stuff. So I did have a little bit of a background. I hadn't had a really big women's volleyball and how to teach the fundamentals and techniques to like women's volleyball at the time. So I went through a pretty fast track of that with the Halton Hurricanes in Burlington for about 4 or 5 years, and that's how it all kind of started.
That's how it all got started. You said, so Terry, you were working with the boys team first, is that right? And then girls team?
So the boys team is actually a men's team. So it's like,
Yeah.
myself, some guys that we, played with who are ex-university players, ex-pros, ex-national team athletes. So we did that for a bunch of years, basically excuse to still play, right? At a decent high level. We would go down to the US Open. We would play against some really, high caliber people who were also in the same boat that we were, that were mainly Americans. And, you're playing against Olympic gold medalists and that type of thing. So you're still in it. And there's obviously a social aspect, which was what kept us all together and continuing to do it. But yeah, so I did that before I coached at the youth level.
Gotcha. Okay. So then how's that transition been? So kind of like, what do you think's kind of evolved in your coaching philosophy from like, let's say coaching like the club level, and then when you transition to the university level?
So, I mean, the fundamentals of teaching the skills are kind of the same. It's just you're always adapting to do new methods of teaching. And every summer I spend time thinking about, okay, how do I need to be better for next year? I think had I jumped right into coaching like youth boys, like I did coach a little bit of boys with provincial team while I was coaching girls. I liked the kind of contrast between the two. I think I would have been less eager to learn new ways to coach and to teach, because I just would have figured, every athlete should do it the way I did. And, that should be good enough. But, when you jump into coaching female athletes after you've been playing as a male, I really learned quickly, like I didn't know a lot. And that I needed to learn a lot about how to communicate effectively with young female athletes. And then as you get into university, the main difference is you're looking at athletes that are going to be with you for 4 or 5 years, whereas for club, you might have an athlete for 1 or 2 years, at least the club that I coached at. So you quickly understand that you don't communicate, or you don't maybe teach each athlete the same, and you have to learn to develop your coaching skills in terms of, okay, this athlete wants to be fired up, this athlete wants to be calmed down. How do I figure out who those athletes are and when I need to employ those kind of like those tools with each athlete? So you do get longer time, and obviously the stakes are higher because people are investing. Like a lot of them are choosing the university they're going to with their volleyball kind of like part being a big component as to why they're teaching. It's not the only thing, but some of them, like it's pretty important. So you have to realize that they're buying into you and the kind of program that you're putting forth, and you're also buying into them and hopefully the work ethic that they're going to put forward.
Yeah, no, it's you definitely got to be a chameleon when kind of adapting to different personalities and archetypes are for sure. Have you seen like what do you think your biggest differences? Do you think going from like coaching the boys or their men's team and then kind of going to the girls and women's side, like are there any like stark differences that kind of just jump out at you?
I think like people ask me that all the time. The one thing is like when I'm coaching women, I really get into how they're feeling before a game. Like, what's the vibe like in the team room? What's their vibe like in serve and pass before? With men, I don't know. Maybe we're just too egotistical, or we got the testosterone flowing, or whatever it is, and we just don't like. We're too dumb and too numb to like the feels sometimes, I guess. So that's a different. And I find that like I have to, and it makes me a better coach to explain to the female athlete why we're doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
where sometimes the guys will just blindly follow, or they just will tell you they're going to follow and then they just don't. And they do their own thing anyway, right?
Yeah. One of the two ends of the spectrum, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
No, okay, I got you. So then, if you talked about like how they feel before the game, so like what are some key things that kind of stand out there, and then how does that change the dynamic, or how does that change how you go into the game? Let's say they're feeling great, or maybe the energy is a little bit lower. Like, what are you doing to adapt to that situation to actually get the best out of them in that case?
It's different for each athlete. I mean, you have your overall theme of your team, and we try to
Yeah,
portray, a growth mindset where it's okay to make mistakes, but we also want to give you again tools on how to deal with those mistakes. Maybe it's not something from a coach they're going to hear. Maybe it's from one of their teammates. We talk about what people need in those scenarios. We've done things like, okay, I want to have what we call a swag line, and I stole that from another coach, but like it's okay in a moment of struggle, I'm going to tell myself this so it gets me back going, like whatever it is, and it's individualized to that athlete. So the big piece of it is you want to try to make sure everyone's feeling good and confident, and they're going to have nerves before a game, and that's
yeah, of
okay
course.
because they care, right? But I've had situations in our serve and pass. We usually start our serve and pass for home games 4 hours before the game because I like to get in early. I like to get our mindset focused on the game. But I've had athletes that are really struggling in those moments, and I just say to them, "Hey, stop thinking. You know what to do. We're sitting here in February. We've been training, and you've been with me for maybe 3-4 years. You know what to do. Stop thinking about it and just let your body do it." And that works sometimes. For others, you have to say, "Hey, look, you know what? You're really not opening up your hip on that pass, and you're trying to get it to midline, and we really need to focus on that." So some need a technical, some just need to feel good. It takes a while to kind of build that trust with the athlete, so they're going to accept
Yeah.
it from you, but also for you to know what they kind of need to hear in that moment.
Okay. No, that absolutely makes sense. Like everyone's again, those different archetypes are critical to understand. Again, it does take time, right? Like we like to
Yeah,
say it's like you got to earn digging rights, right? Like
sure.
you have the foundation built, all that kind of stuff, but you can't put the shovel in the ground until you actually get the permit, right? That takes some time to establish that
Yep.
trust,
Yep.
right? So, in your view, what do you think is one of the more important traits a coach should have when, let's say, getting to the university level?
You've got to realize that you don't know as much as maybe you think you do, and you really have to spend some time in self-reflection, how to be better for your athletes, how to be a better coach. What are your opponents doing? What are they doing at the top level? Can you bring some of that into your coaching? Um, you know, uh, Really looking to grow yourself, right? I mean, my I've been coaching at Brock now for 7 years. I do things a little bit differently in year seven than I did in year one. That's sometimes trial by error, but sometimes I learn some things from some colleagues who coaches out west or even coaches in Ontario. They do things a little differently, and you're trying to create a good student athlete experience. Like you want to win, of course, but you really like for me now, it's about having athletes leave our program speaking well and thinking back at their time at Brock and going, you know what, that was a really good experience. I made some great connections. I learned a lot. I'm a better human being because I went through that. Whether we've won, we've lost. Obviously, it's happier times when you're winning, but there's a lot to
Yeah,
be
of
learned
course.
when the times when you don't, right?
Yeah, of course. Again, it's we've been following the women's volleyball career at Brock for a while. It's really almost seemed like it's done a pivot since you've kind of taken the helm there. What do you think's been that, in your opinion, what do you think's been that kind of moment that's kind of turned the corner where all of a sudden now you guys are pretty much always going to be top three, top five, if not winning the OUAs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I go that far. I think we've gone through a really good cycle here, and now we have to rebuild a
Yeah.
little bit. But I mean, the goal is always to get to that end, OUA final game. I think the first thing is when I took over the team from the previous coach, I think the athletes were ready for a change in voice. It's just as simple as that. Like they're ready to hear things in a different way. They're ready to do things in a different way. They're ready to train in a different way. My style of training is a lot. It's very game like in terms of
Mhm.
we're going to teach you, but then we want to get what we're teaching you right into game scenarios. So there's variability training and adaptability and hopefully skill transfer as soon as possible because you're having to make all these decisions while you're learning these new things. So I think that was a new way to do it. I think we talked a lot about winning and being a learned behavior, like, but so is
Mhm.
losing. So if you're going to learn how to lose and just accept that, then maybe that's what your destiny is. And if you're going to learn how to win and really learning how to win on the court is one thing, but doing all the right things off court, and that's the thing I think we talked a lot about is what is our team statement? Like, what is it that we say we're going to do? And then what are we doing away from the volleyball court to back up that statement in terms of this is what we say we're doing? If I'm engaging in activities that are contraindicating that and that
Yeah.
success criteria, then are we really in this together, or am I really bought into this scenario? And of course, there's moments of struggle and moments where you step in the wrong direction, obviously, but hopefully you've got a good group around you that can bring you back in and point you in the right direction.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got to be adaptive. It's kind of just not just saying the words because again, everyone says the same
Yeah,
buzzwords and work
yeah,
hard and
yeah,
do all this
yeah,
stuff, consistency and everything else. But really, it's going to be the actions that really dictate.
for sure.
It's building an established process. One would hope, right? Okay, so then, what do you think's been some of the bigger challenges that you've kind of faced at this level coaching?
Yeah. Recruiting is huge.
Hmm.
Player management's also huge. I mean, sometimes like we stat everything like three different ways, right? And the
Yeah.
interpretation of how you see things might not be the same as another coach, or for sure not another player. But we always try to have an open conversation about it. My coaches are involved in almost every decision we make because I'm not
Hmm.
right sometimes, right? Like in
Yeah.
fact, a lot of the time I'm not right. So it's like, do they see what I see? We talk about that, and with the athletes, like, okay, they might not, like, we've had situations this year where we're putting an athlete in a position that they don't want to be in, right? But
Yeah.
we feel that this is the position which best helps the team. So it's our whole we before me culture. We spend a lot of time working on the culture. That's another thing. You might think you have your culture down, but as athletes come through, the way they perceive things, the way they learn, the way they interpret information changes. So, you've got to find a way to keep it current and also not boring, because athletes these days, they want everything right away. And,
Yeah.
some of them aren't willing to wait. Some of them have waited. And it's great when you see those ones who've actually been patient. So dealing with the athlete and learning how to communicate with them is huge in terms of like a challenge. The recruiting is a super big challenge. Figuring out your opponents is a huge challenge. How we can start competing with Canada West on a regular scenario, and even obviously Quebec and the AUS conference have done much better than we have at nationals the last couple of years. So why is that? Looking into it, I mean, we're not competing as not to get into this rabbit hole, but we're not on an even playing field with the rest of the country in terms of how we recruit, our scholarship offerings, age
Yeah.
level, that type of thing. So trying to navigate that and still be able to say, like, look, we're here, we're battling, and it doesn't matter what's going on, all the other noise and stuff that's around. Like, we're just gonna, that is what it is, but we're gonna keep going, right?
Yeah. No, it's always interesting to see how like the West and some of the advantages and obviously they have their challenges too, but it's crazy the advantages they typically have, especially when it comes to recruiting and just the funding, I think alone is incredible,
Yeah.
right?
And we're in a different time now. Like, if you take a look at what's going on in the NCAA, like every day I
Hmm.
open my phone, I'm looking, there's some type of like agreement where they're trying to get all these players who were now, because of the new 18 scholarship rule, that's
Yeah.
it's killed a bunch of like the walk-on scenario and all that stuff that used to have in the States. But you have athletes who were walk-ons that are now finding themselves without a team. So there's a big conversation happening in the NCAA right now as to, okay, what are we doing with that? We've got to grandfather some of these people through because it's just not. But it's also not fair for some kid to be, a Heisman Trophy winner in football, play 2 years in the NFL, and now they're done and they're pumping gas somewhere. Meanwhile, the university made a ton of money on the sales of their jerseys and the TV rights and all that stuff. So I get that. For us here in Ontario, we're just trying to compete with the other provinces and what we can offer, right? And
Yeah.
that's a challenge, right? Because that you've got the out west has had a bunch of full-time coaches for longer. They're allowed to offer full tuition and fees. So if I'm looking at an athlete that's also looking with UBC, Trinity, Calgary, Alberta, they're like, well, wait a minute. So if I'm at a disadvantage if I want to stay in Ontario and have my parents come watch me, every other weekend or what have you. If I go out west, you can pay for all my school pretty much, except for maybe my rent, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it's definitely a unique scenario that we deal with in Ontario.
Yeah, no, the recruiting is definitely it's a very unique situation in this province. And so kind of building on that then. So what is like your I wouldn't say your top recruiting, but like, your top selling point for the program, but what have you found successful when it comes to recruiting? And then we'll go down that rabbit hole a bit more. Like what are you looking for?
Yeah, so obviously, like, Brock is one of the only universities that has a sports management program. So if you've got that athletic kid who maybe wants to get a career in sports when they're done, I mean, everybody
Yeah.
talks about Kyle Dubas. Now he's with the Penguins. Before he was GM of the Leafs. Like, that's a great story in terms of tell a potential recruit. Like, people come from Brock and they do some pretty cool things. Our concurrent ed program, education program, is second to none in the province. I've got athletes. I mean, we've got one of our coaches didn't get into Brock but got into U of T. right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you talk about that out there, that's, some people don't usually associate that with U of T and Brock being on the same academic level in that aspect. So,
Yeah.
those are big things. We're really trying to push a good university student athlete experience. I mean, we went to Hawaii this year. There's not a lot of teams that are doing that. The athletes paid about $1,000 each themselves. We fundraised the rest, and that got them, their flight there, their hotel for a week, 2 meals, 3 excursions. It was a really good experience. And they'll talk about that for the rest of their lives. Heck, I'll talk about that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Not around my wife and kids though, because they didn't come. But but yeah. So I mean, those type of things, and to know that, hey, we try to make it really fun as well as working
Yeah.
hard. Like the one things that I've stuck to is we're gonna try to have more fun than everybody else. But we're gonna try to work harder than everybody else, and that involves little awards. I mean, if you've seen our Instagram, we've got 3 championship wrestling belts that we've got that we award every week after games. We've got a shield for blocks, an axe for kills. And I remember one of the former athletic directors. My very first purchase with the Brock credit card was a wrestling style WWE belt.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, "Wait a minute, like what did we just do here? Like what?" And then I
Can we
explained
write
it
this
to
off?
him. Yeah, and he's like, "Okay, I get it now." Now you see that every week, and it's been copied. Like maybe we weren't the first to do it. Like I started doing this at club, but now I've
Yeah.
noticed there's a lot more volleyball programs with a championship belt that they're using for something, and I'd like to think that we were kind of ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, yeah, it keeps them engaged. It keeps them, excited, and it's like those small victories that if
Sure.
they work their bag off during the week and they kind of put it on the line on game day and they've earned it, right? Like even if it's
Yes.
not a win or a loss, it's recognition that okay, they're doing something right that's been noticed, and that hopefully would kind of keep them on the right track, right?
Yeah, and I think
So
celebrating some of the smaller things, like everyone can celebrate a gold medal, everyone can celebrate,
yeah,
being a top program in the country, everything. But if you celebrate that kid who maybe got in there and got their first kill, right? And now
yeah,
you're like, you highlight that in the team afterwards. And because it's not just about that kill and that play, but the effect it has on the teammates, and you point that out and say, like, look, this is what we really got something here now, because it's not just about that one kill. It's not the fact that, you got in and you got your first kill. It's the fact that you did that and the whole team is behind you.
yeah,
That's cool, and you don't see that a lot in volleyball. Like when my kids are playing soccer and stuff like that, and I deal with soccer parents all the time, and the difference between something like soccer and something like volleyball is you only get to touch the ball once. So my kid's only as good as your kid. My teammate's only as good as my other teammate. That type of thing, and you
yeah,
really get some of that, like really good kind of vibe and feels when your team is behind you and they're watching you succeed.
yeah. Absolutely. No, it's we understand that too, 100%. Like those small wins, like it's not going to be all sunshine and daisies all the time, right? They
Mhm.
need something that helps. If nothing else, I think it helps clarify that okay, we're on the right track. Like something happened here. My team supports me. My people support me. And it's just kind of contributing to the overall main goal of the program, right? So,
Mhm.
and if nothing else, it keeps them engaged. So then, what are you looking for when you're recruiting, right? Because obviously, like you said, like it's very competitive, and we have certain advantages and disadvantages. So what are you looking for? Like if a recruit's kind of listening to this, like what are you looking for to kind of say, hey, that person fits our mold?
Yeah. So the person needs to be able to compete. They need to be
Hmm.
able to struggle and get through it, like handle the hard. I'm big on body language while you're on the court. I'm watching what you do when you succeed. I'm watching what you do when you make a mistake. I'm watching how you interact with your coach, your teammates, your family members afterwards, right? Like those are the important pieces to the type of people we want to have around, because when you're traveling in a bus and you're going to Windsor for and you're there for 5 hours on the bus together, you've got to be around people that you can hang out with and get along with, and that's part of it, right? So you're trying to bring in people that you think will fit your mold. So if they're ready to compete, they don't put themselves in front of the team. Those are probably the two biggest things that I look for.
Okay, got it. Now, is there anything objective? Like I know like people are always talking about their approach and their block and their vert and everything
Yeah.
else. So there are certain metrics that okay, like this is like the bare minimum cutoff we got to hit.
Yeah, yeah. So it's position specific, right? So
Hmm.
obviously spike touch is the big one for volleyball, because it's a display of maybe how high you can attack, but also maybe how athletic you are, depending on how big of an athlete
Hmm.
you are or not, right? So your speed, obviously, if you're going to be a libero, your ability and your ball control is something that we're looking at. I think we have it on our kind of like selection criteria for our tryouts is if you're going to be an outside hitter for us, you have to touch at least 9.6. If you're going to be a middle, we want you at least 9.8. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Those we want pivot setters for the most part. So setters that have experience doing the right foot pivot. So those are kind of things that we look for in the athletes. Obviously, we've got athletes on our team that touch over 10 feet. So, it's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the best volleyball player on the team. It just means that they have a pretty big canvas and a great framework to kind of work with.
Yeah, yeah, they're physically capable now. It's like, okay, can we better hone the skill set? It's not they can't do
Absolutely.
this, you know what I mean? It's more just like, can they learn the skill? Now they have the physical ability to do it.
Right.
Okay, I get that. Yeah. So obviously, it was I think it was a tough loss against Mac in the OUA final there.
Yeah.
And losing is part of sports, right? It's the beauty and the curse of sports. So then, how do you guys kind of turn those tough losses into like teaching moments? Like, what's the conversation like with the team after like a tough loss like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough match. I mean, Mac outplayed us hands down. We had a lot going on that week. We had seniors that are actually leaving the program, and they're used to winning in this game. I mean, we got
Yeah,
into that game for the fifth year in a row. That's tough, right?
yeah,
So obviously, it didn't go the way we wanted, and that's part of it. So, we go into the team room, and there's tears and everything. And the first thing I do is I sit down on the ground, so I'm at their level. I'm like, look, this is not a moment where I'm your coach telling you what you did wrong. I'm one of you. I'm experiencing this too. And
yeah,
I said, and I just tell them, I'm like, I wish there was something I could tell you that's going to take the pain away, but it's not. It doesn't exist. If it was, we would use it all the time, but it's not. It's not there. So we just talked about. I said, spend some time thinking about this moment. I mean, again, it's not a failure of a season either. Like there's
yeah. Of course.
13 other teams that would like to be in that game, and like it just happens that this is in our gym. We wanted to get it in our gym, so we accomplished so many great things, and that this one match doesn't define our season because we lost it. I mean, you go back the year before, we lost to Acadia at Nationals. Had we won that game, we would have been going to Nationals in that moment. So it would have changed, right? So there's so much
Yeah,
leading into that moment that it's not just about that one game where we kind of laid an egg, right? So,
yeah,
but we also want to make sure that you feel it, right? Like I'm big on feelings. Like the team has seen me cry a bunch of times, and I've been in the rooms with them crying and that type of thing because you've got to feel it. Because if you don't feel
absolutely.
it, you don't learn how to get over it and deal with the emotion of it. So, we really had a tough moment there. And then we obviously have every moment you kind of meet with the team after that. We kept things the same. We didn't change how we process it. We come back, we do our Monday meeting where we talk about the match. We go over stats, that type of thing. And then we obviously have our athletic banquet, and then we had our final team party. And at that moment, we'd done a lot of our kind of like, feeling bad and that type of stuff and kind of started to heal. And it was the last time that group was going to be together. And I said, okay, look, guys, like this is it. You will never be in the same room with all these people again. There's 26 of us here. Just let's enjoy each other for the last time in this moment. And of course, we're still going to interact. And now with the cell phone and email and Instagram and all these Snapchat stuff, you have no reason to not be in contact with someone who you
Yeah.
created cultivated a great relationship or friendship with. So this isn't the end. This is just the next step for a lot of us. So, and that's kind of how we did it.
Yeah, no, it's human. It's a human nature. I think sometimes that gets lost. And you said it too. I
Yeah.
think, a lot of times coaches might put their ego and I get it. It's a wins and losses business. Like these things
Yeah.
are dictated and careers are dictated by that. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings and you're right. I think we need to kind of ride that wave of feelings. I think otherwise you're just in a style of avoidance strategy, which doesn't really solve the problem. Like you have to kind
No.
of be able to, and it's not like a mental toughness thing where I think the mental toughness thing is just because you're avoiding feeling a certain thing or whatever. That's not tough. It's just you're now reorganizing your life to avoid handling a conflict or something that you can't control, right? So I think it's necessary, honestly, to be able to navigate, ride the wave, and it'll pass, and you could take something valuable at the end of it, emotionally
Yeah,
anyway.
and I don't think like people talk about avoiding it. I don't think you're actually avoiding it. What I think you're doing is you're kicking it down the road because it's going to
Yeah,
come up somewhere later and you don't know. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I have been to therapy and I can tell you that, one of the things they talk about is you really like, when my dad passed away, like, did I grieve that properly? No, I didn't.
yeah,
So then now I think there's moments where that kind of scenario and maybe the trauma that I didn't deal with comes out, right? And I think that obviously volleyball is it's not life threatening or anything like that, but I
yeah.
think there's a scenario there where if you don't deal with you're feeling here and you just kick it down the road, then again, I don't think you're doing what you need to do to get over it and to actually heal.
Yeah, absolutely. There needs to be navigation. That's, I think, the biggest thing is like navigate. It's going to be chaos. It's just, can you manage to navigate it as elegantly as possible and then hopefully have a decent outcome at the end of it, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, no, I totally understand that part. It's coaching stuff, man. a lot of emotions, a lot of ups and downs, and everything else that goes with it. It's a crazy ride. So then, obviously, right, you have kids, you have a lifestyle, and then you have the coaching aspect. So how do you kind of maintain that balance between like your personal life and then obviously the responsibilities of coaching a university team?
Yeah, I think it is hard, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. Like there's times where you go away, so you really have to kind of compartmentalize it. Even though, like my daughter loves coming to the games, my wife comes to the games, my son comes to the games, my son plays volleyball, my daughter plays volleyball, and it is a kind of like, especially most recently, where I'm spending a lot of time coaching other people's kids. Here are my kids, and some part of me doesn't want to coach them so much because if I'm their coach now, I'm telling them, clean your room, take out the garbage, don't do this, don't do that. By the way, put your foot here, open up, create your proper ring. Like it's just too much. Like I think that
yeah,
the dad meter goes off and they're like, I can't listen to this guy anymore. So I really think that you have to differentiate that. The other thing that I think that a lot of coaches don't necessarily do right away, and I know I didn't right away, is you have to disassociate your self-worth from the success of your volleyball team. I think there's a lot of
yeah,
coaches out there. I mean, I feel bad when we don't perform, and I take responsibility because I obviously have a hand in that. But it doesn't. It's not a measure of who I am as a person because there's so much that I can't control. But in
yeah,
the beginning of it, I was really like, if we lost, it was my fault. If we didn't perform well in a moment, it was my fault. And yes, part of it is my fault because I'm supposed to prepare the team, but it's not solely on me. And that was a big thing that helped me understand that there's more to me than just this volleyball coach in that moment. Yes, I am
yeah,
a dad. Yes, I am a husband, and I need to kind of still continue to kind of like cultivate those relationships. I mean, I just went away to Florida with my wife and my kids. We had a wonderful time. There was no like, I'm still talking to recruits and stuff while I'm there, but mainly it was time I got to spend with them, going to Universal and my son golfing for the first time, and playing pickleball and all that stuff. So making sure that you can um, identify and, as you mentioned, navigate through these scenarios is very important because you have to have time management. And I'm not the only coach that goes through this. We've got coaches that are, female coaches that are having babies and bringing them into practice in their infancy, and you're like, I don't know how you're doing that. Like I didn't, like, that's tough, right? So
yeah. It's crazy.
but it takes a plan, and it takes a really, really thoughtful and compassionate partner.
Yeah, we were talking with Coach Vic from the River Lions like a few weeks ago, and shout out to all the spouses, whether it be husbands or wives or anything else
Yeah.
like that. But he also kind of paralleled the same thing. He's like, you kind of dissociate the two, and he's like, you have to understand, like, yeah, I'm the head coach of a professional team or GM of whatever, I'm director of this or that. He's like, but that doesn't mean like my spouse or my wife or my husband, their position with the kids is anything less. Like just as important as I feel my position is, like hers or his position is the exact same. So there's gonna be days where I'm gonna take the kids, like her
Yep.
shit or his shit matters too.
Sure.
So it's not just kind of tying your identity. This is who I am. This is what I'm. Like this is all I am. It's like, well, no, like separate yourself a little bit. And I think mentally this is good too. Otherwise, you go down a rabbit hole where it's just like it can get to some dark areas if you don't actually, kind of put it into perspective of what it really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. You need help. You need good assistant coaches. Like the team that I've
Yeah.
had, like we've been together for, at least this group's been together for like 3 years, and they help me out a huge amount. And there's times where I need them to kind of take over something, or to run a practice because I've got to take my kids somewhere or something like that. Sometimes my kids come into practice, but like, I mean, our assistant coaches, I mean, we don't, they're not compensated anywhere near fair, right? They're
Yeah.
doing it because they love it, and I think that comes across in the way they deal with the athletes, and the athletes see that. So, it's a really good scenario, and they help. So you have to have a good support system, kind of like your spouse at home is supporting you with the kids in the moments when I can't be there. I support her. Like anytime my wife says she wants to go on a trip, I'm like, go. I don't care where it is. Vegas, you want to go anywhere? I don't
Yep.
care. Just go. Yes, yes, yes. Because I know it's like 5 or 6 to 1, right? Like I'm going away
Yep.
6 times to her one. So the moment she says, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to Palm Springs," go, go. I got it. Don't worry. Figure it out. No, no worries, right? But on the other side of it, if I ever said to my coaches, "Hey, like I can't be there for this match or this," it's happened, and they step up and they're happy to do it. So I think you got to have the right people around you, and I'm completely thankful to the people who've been supporting me.
Yeah, no, it does take a village. It sounds cliche, but it takes a village. You
Yeah,
need to have good support staff, and if you're very transparent with a vision, I think they'll understand the mission,
sure.
right? So then I want to kind of like circle back a little bit to like the team management side of things. So obviously, like you have your first stringers, you have your secondary, your bench players. So how do you kind of communicate, for example, like when someone coming in, like whether a new recruit, freshman, what have you? Because again, you probably have like your set starting six and maybe a couple others on there. How do you kind of transparently relay the message of like this is your role as we see it right now? Because
Yeah.
obviously, I know every person that comes on a team, they're always striving, like they want to be the go-to person, which is understandable. That's why they're in the sport, is to progress. But maybe they're not quite there yet, or whatever the stats line up. So how do you kind of communicate that transparency and then like kind of put them where they're at? And then if they're coming to you saying, hey, how do I earn my playing time back? What are some things that you're kind of like, walk me through that process a little bit?
Yeah, I think you have to be completely transparent when an athlete comes in and says, "This is where we see you now. This
Yeah.
is where we think you can go. That's the plan. Plans change. What makes plan change? How you develop. Do you get injured? What's the player ahead of you doing? What's the player behind you doing? I think keeping stats, and this is, when I talk to some of the younger coaches that are out there, or not, I shouldn't say younger, so not younger in age, but maybe they've only been coaching for 2, 3 years. Like having stats is important
Mm.
because you can go back and say, look, like if we want you to be a starting, left side, here's what we need to see in terms of your numbers. And they might say, well, I'm not in the game. How am I going to get these numbers? Well, then we start keeping some stats in practice and we take a look at those. And I think like, my big thing has been you can always ask me the big girl question, but you better be prepared for the big girl answer. Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
and
fair.
understand that. And like, and I said that in club too. And I told the parents when I was coaching club, like, I'm not talking to you about your daughter's playing time. I'm not talking to you about their position, but they can ask me whenever they want. And if you have a question you want to ask or something like that through them, go ahead. But they at 16, 17, 18, they got to start kind of like advocating for themselves and having those difficult conversations with their coach. And at university, it's the same thing. And I've got athletes that are disappointed. But when I sit down with them, I say, hey, look, okay, I get it. Like you've put the work in. You haven't maybe got to this scenario that we're hoping for. Do you agree? Like, let's watch some video together. Here's what I'm talking about. And I try to point it out. And obviously, when you point out their shortcomings in the moment, it's always hard, right?
Yeah.
And you say, look, at this scenario in this play, you didn't go for this ball, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, or you hit this into the net, or whatever. But this is part of the reason why when we sit down as coaches to decide who we're dressing, like it's who's on the team, right? Are you redshirting? Are you not? Who's traveling? Because we can only travel a certain number. Who's dressing? Who's getting into the game? And who's starting. So we talk about leveling up and we say, if you
Yeah.
want to level up, here's what you need to do. And then we're very, very clear about this one is like, don't lose any of the tiebreakers, right? Which means, okay, you
Yeah.
guys have the same numbers. Maybe you've been there the same amount of time because sometimes the senior athlete, if they're tied, we'll give it to the senior athlete. But, everything's the same. Don't let me speak to the strength and conditioning coach and find out you haven't been going after it in lift. Or, don't let me find out you're not going to study hall or your grades are slipping. Because that's the other thing. If you're
Yeah.
not getting a certain average for us, you're an academic risk. And now I don't know if I can put you in the plans because I don't know if you're going to be able to be part of the team. So these are all the things that we continuously talk about with the athletes so that they really have a full understanding of what the expectations and really what our standards are. And the big thing is they get a say in what the standards are. So in
Yeah.
terms of like being on a team, we have a code of conduct which we take a look at every year, and we want them to weigh in on it. Like, do you think that, not drinking alcohol 48 hours before a game, do you think that's right? Yeah, you do. Okay, great. Do you think, having a certain a grade point average or average to be able to train is good? What do you think that is? Okay, here it is. And we let them have an input so they actually feel like they have ownership in it.
Yeah.
And then that comes into the who's starting, who's not. And there's been athletes where, they've had a really, really bad match. And then the athlete that comes in has done a really great job. But we're sitting here as coaches going, okay, like, yes, that athlete struggled. This light came in, they did well. But what does that do for us in our long-term scenario of this season? Because we believe that this athlete probably is the one that's going to help us be more successful. They just had an off day. That's a really hard, conversation to have with the person who came in and feels like they've earned it because
Yeah.
realistically they have. So that's when they have to trust in us as coaches that we're not just looking at it in one window, we're taking a look at the full body of work, right? Now,
Yeah.
if you're beating that person out consistently, then you
Yeah.
have a real good kind of, argument to say, hey, look, like I'm beating them in practice. I perform better in the match. Like, why am I not getting the shot here? Right. And that conversation happens too. And it's tough.
Yeah. No, I think, no, that's the, you touched on some great points there too. I think it's like, it's no different than like a lot of other sports too. If they're not familiar with like the other faucets that go into sport performance, right? Like a lot of people, if they're basketball players, they just want to hoop. That's all they do.
Right.
They just want to hoop. They don't care about anything else. But like they feel like they need to go train, or they have to go to class. And we were talking with other coaches too. It's like the academics are a huge part of it. It seems like, like obvious, but a lot of them just, play school, so to speak. But really, like, for a coach we've talked to, and a few of them all say the same things, is like, it really comes down to the liability issue. It's like, yeah, you're really skilled, but you're on the fence of, where like, can I trust you to stay eligible to even play for us? Like it's, you know what I mean? Like it's wary. You're like, damn, do we take the chance on this person? Yeah, they could do some damage, but can they keep playing for us? Or like, we only have them for a semester, and then we're going to run into the second half where it's like we're going to run into some issues, right?
Yeah.
So it gets a little crazy. But then I want to go back to the point you said about what like the self-advocacy part, because I think that a lot of young athletes need to hear this too. And we deal with a lot of young athletes everywhere from like ages of like 11 up to 18U and college and pro and everything in between, right? So and we've kind of had this conversation with both the athletes and the parents, but a lot of times we'll see, I think one of our other guests said too, like parents are doing their kids a disservice by constantly kind of running to the aid of anytime there's like, I think it goes back, honestly, I think it ties back to the conversation we had with like navigating conflict and navigating these tough situations. Parents are, I think, are not all of them obviously, but a decent chunk, I would argue, are kind of, I think they're well-intentioned, but they kind of just hop in and like, it's like, let them practice having a conversation with an authoritative figure positively, even if it's like not what they want to hear, but positively. Let them get some reps in. It's a skill, I would argue. It's a skill to actually address, hey, I have a question, or hey, I wasn't sure if it's a behavior issue or if it's a tactical issue or whatever. Like just navigating that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think the big thing that we talk about, and it's in our very first slide every year, and it's one slide all on its own, and the word is conflict. And I said, look, you're going to have conflict with each other. We're going to have conflict as coaches. We're going to have conflict as player to coach. I'm going to have conflict with the administration over gym times and whatever. And I said, but it's how you navigate those conflicts, which is what's going to define the relationship you have with that person. So understand, like, to think there's not going to be any conflict is ridiculous, and you're going to have it. So you have to learn to kind of like logically think about how you want to be perceived in those conflicts, right? And whether you're just going off emotionally or what you're saying has merit to what you're trying to accomplish or the point you're trying to make. And that's a really big piece. And I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, it's way worse. And I know there's like, I'm a soccer fan. I still play soccer myself. But there's like the soccer parents are way worse than what I see in volleyball. And I think it's again because, little Susie can dribble the ball through the whole team and score, and their kid's the best kid on the field. In volleyball, hey, if you might be the best passer, but if you don't have someone that can set and hit, it's a different scenario. So I think the mindset's different. But you do see the parents coming and advocating for their kids, and like, again, that's not helping them, because then they get to me, and I can tell you the kids that fail out of class at university or really struggle in big matches, big moments, are the ones who have helicopter parents that have done everything for them. And I see it all the time in soccer where you shouldn't take Susie off, or don't put my son on the lower team, or all that stuff. I try to make it, and maybe this is wrong too, but I try to make it harder for my kids and be like, okay, look, we have a situation right now where my daughter was away for a week, and she's gone from the target team to the development team for this upcoming game. And I'm not calling the coach saying, why did you do that? I probably know why. She didn't practice for a week, right? And she's now going to give someone else the opportunity. Hey, I understand that, but it's a learning opportunity for myself with my daughter to say, hey, do you understand this? So how bad, we had a conversation yesterday, how bad do you want to work to get back up to that top position? Do you really care, or do you not? Because that's the other thing, because if they don't really care, then that's a whole different conversation. But if you do care, what are you willing to sacrifice to do it? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? Are you going to go out in the backyard and kick the ball around and work on your first touch? Like, what are you going to do? So these are the things I think that it was a really good analogy that I saw on Instagram like a few weeks ago, where they said that your sea turtle gets kind of like born in the sand, right? And the sea turtle then spends however much time it takes them to walk, like figure out how to walk after they hatch through the egg and get into the water. And what's happening now is, if you just take that sea turtle and plop them in the water, they probably die because they haven't developed the strength in their limbs and all that stuff. And essentially that's what parents are doing now. They're just taking their turtle, their child, and dropping it in the water. And now child doesn't know how to swim because he hasn't had any struggle and that type of thing. And I know it's hard because I've been that parent who my son was a goalie in soccer, and you're driving home and the team won 2-1, but he let a bad goal, so he feels like he's lost. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you made one mistake, okay? The guy up top who missed 3 or 4 scoring chances but scored one is now a hero. I said, just put it in perspective, right? And use those learning moments. I don't get mad at the defenders because they did let the kid shoot or something like that. It's just a different mindset. I think I have that maybe because I am a coach and I can see that, but I don't think all parents do, because we love our kids and we want what's best for them. We don't like to have tears on the car ride home, so we're trying to do everything to protect them from the tears. But the tears are what's going to help your kid get through life and be stronger when we're gone.
Yeah, it's struggle is good for the soul, man. Like
Yep.
it's a necessary thing that, and you're right. Like I think it's all well intentioned. I would never argue like parents are not well intentioned, but a lot of times it's a
Yeah.
little too far to one side of the spectrum where like now you're doing it as a disservice. It's like let them
Right.
learn to navigate at a younger age because they're gonna have to learn how to self advocate for themselves and handle tough conversations. Especially we have guys that are in like pro teams or getting drafted and all this other stuff. It's like you're going to be a commodity now, especially if you're
Mm.
getting like big money for these games and everything else. Like if you're not getting the time or putting the numbers, like understand, like we had guys go to like the CFL draft and stuff like that too. And all of a sudden, like they're watching guys, like they call it D&D, dinner and Delta. It's like, hey, do you want to, they'll come knock on your door. Do you want a window or an aisle seat? And they'll just send you home. So it's kind
Right.
of like, are you able to confidently go up and have those conversations with the coach? Like, hey, appreciate having me out. Like, can I get some feedback? Like, what are your thoughts?
Right.
Like, are you
Yeah.
able to, like you said, like if you want the big boy conversation before the big boy answer type thing, same thing. Like, but that's a skill. You need to practice that. Like,
Yeah.
if you disagree or if coach is yelling at you or if, someone's on your case, it's like, okay, how do you want to handle this? Like,
Right.
go and have a conversation. And can you have that conversation positively and professionally and collaboratively
Yeah.
where the outcome is going to be parallel for the betterment of both you, the coach, and the program,
Yeah.
right?
For
So
sure.
it's I think more young athletes need to have that practice, and kind of parents just need to kind of just step back and let them watch how they navigate, and then praise them for actually having the courage to navigate that, right?
For sure.
So I think it's a big one. So then let's say there's some coaches that want to get into the field. Like, what advice would you give to coaches that want to get to your level?
I just got asked this the other day. So understand what you're getting into. You're not going to make a ton of, I mean, not in Canada anyway, you're not going to make a ton of money
Yeah.
coaching women's volleyball. In the States now, though, I mean, there was an athlete, I was telling the story yesterday, an athlete went from Pitt to Texas for $750,000 NIL deal, right? This is women's volleyball we're talking, right? So now the
Yeah.
women's volleyball is like booming in North America. There's 4 pro leagues. You've got games where 88,000
Huge.
people are
Yeah.
going to, right? I mean, you can kind of sense some of that here. I mean, we do a camp and there's the response we get. Like we've got 3 camps that are basically sold out for the summer. That's huge for us in terms of fundraising. So understand that there is a fundraising component to what you're going to have to do. Like I'm basically running a small business to help us do things like Hawaii and have a new team room at Brock for women's volleyball and all these things, because it helps provide that student athlete experience we're talking about, and understand that you've got to kind of pay your dues. Like I might have got fast tracked a little bit because I had a decent playing career, so I knew some things, and I've been in the sport for 20 years before I ever coached. So if you don't have that type of playing background, then there's lots of really good coaches who don't have a really big playing background, and sometimes that's a benefit because now they see things differently. They don't have any preconceived notions. They're just, this is how you teach a skill, this is my success criteria, here's what I'm using. Like one of my assistants and I battle all the time because he's a numbers guy and I'm becoming more of a numbers guy, but I'm also like, in this scenario I've lived this is what I feel. And you can't put a number on someone's feeling, right? You
Yeah.
just can't, right? So there's that kind of back and forth. But I would say find a mentor or a couple of them, right? Um, Understand that you don't have to recreate the wheel, and there's already ways out there how to teach. So find out what those are, right? And
Hmm.
learn into your, whether it's gold medal squared or art of coaching, or you want to find one of the local university coaches and spend some time in their gym, but really be open to learning not only the game and how to play it, but how to teach it is the most important thing. Just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you're the best teacher at it. I think Wayne Gretzky was the best hockey player of all time, but I don't know if he was the best coach, right? When he took his first coaching job. Like I think people think Magic Johnson went through the same type of scenario. So understand that there's playing and there's coaching, and just because you can do one doesn't mean you can do the other.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. it's you do need mentorship. I think that's what a lot of the other coaches we had on the podcast said too. It's like find a good mentor and find a diverse range of mentors. Don't just be
Yes.
under one umbrella. Like learn to see different styles, personalities, good and bad, right? And be able to, take what you can and disregard the rest and see if you can find your own style within that, right?
Yep.
So, here's a fun one for you. If you could change one thing about how volleyball is coached today, what would it be? And when I say like how it's coached today, this could be anything from like the club level to the university level, right? Like, or somewhere in between there. But it's just interesting to see, like, knowing what you know now, if you could change one thing about how it's coached or how it's progressed or developed, what would that be?
I think we're in volleyball, we are making rules to protect athletes from shitty coaches, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that's a problem because you're stunting the growth of certain athletes. Like for example, you're not allowed to hand pass until you get to a certain age, right? I personally think that not hand passing makes it so that you're not taking easier defensive plays with your hands because you're not allowed to do it on the easy serve that comes where you can kind of do that, right? That's one example. So what we're doing is we're changing rules because we don't want coaches to just think about winning, and that we will just make it so they can't do these things, and then now they're trying to find ways around it. Like, for example, fair play. What coaches have now done because we have to have fair play is they just make their team smaller. So instead of having a team of 12, you have a team of 9. So now you don't have to play everybody. You can play the same kids again. And I'm like, well, but what are your practices like with only 9 players? Like,
Yeah.
you want to, for me, I want to get things in the game. So I think we're trying to coach the coaches by making rules of the game instead of coach the coaches. Give more experience to like there's a new program out there that I'm actually part of now, which is a mentorship program where aspiring coaches can go. They can take a look at the bios of all the coaches that are on there, and they can select a mentorship program with the coach that they like. And I think that's a really good way to do it, instead of just constricting with rules as to, okay, you have to do this in this scenario. Some of them have been great. I think there is an area where triple ball, for example, I was definitely against of. If you don't know, it's the parent comes on and they do this up to, I think it's 13U, where they come on and they put a free ball in after each team is served, right? And what that does, it allows for more bump set spike, right? Because otherwise, as
Yeah, more
parents,
gameplay.
we'd be sitting there going miss serve, shanks, pass, oh, a rally, great, and like the kids lose interest, the parents lose interest, that type of thing. So that's one of the rules where I was maybe against it, but now I kind of see the value of it, but not for too long. But the whole
Yeah.
hand pass thing, that's tough. I mean, and the difference in the rules to the states, they're far more inclusive. Like they allow way more subs. I think we could do that here. But
Yeah.
the argument on that side is, well, then you have middles who get to university level, they've never served because their coach who wants to win keeps subbing them out, right? So
Yeah.
I think we should spend more time teaching the coaches, but to do that, we have to have more people who want to coach, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tough.
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
It's a very unforgiving profession at times, eh?
yeah,
Yeah, I get that one. Okay, well, that was good. I always like to finish off these things with like a fun question, but
sure.
we'll do this one. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh,
Yeah, that's always, eh?
yeah. So what can we define a historical figure?
Sure, it could be. Let's just pick any famous person, dead or alive, or someone that inspired you, dead or alive, that kind of thing. You could have dinner with them and pick their brain. Who would it be and why?
Hmm. Who would it be and why? So I'm like right now, immediately coming to my mind is which wrestler would I love to have a dinner with, right? Because that comes because
Yeah,
I'm an old school wrestling guy. My daughter and I watch it now, but I think Michael Jordan. Either
nice.
him or Kobe Bryant. I think Michael Jordan because my wife and I we were just having this conversation today as we were showing our son a Kobe Bryant moment where he's talking about what you're willing to sacrifice and to do to be great type of thing, and we talked about Kobe Bryant being different than Michael Jordan, where Kobe Bryant like the guys would be coming in from the bar the night out in Vegas, he's on his way to the gym, and this is 4 a.m. Michael Jordan wasn't that guy, but you couldn't outcompete Michael Jordan. It didn't matter what it was like, and that was the thing. So I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to ask him. Obviously, he's been successful, but what were the downfalls of him being that ultra competitive? Like he
Yeah.
lost friends over it, I'm sure. Maybe
Hmm.
relationships with the people in his family, that type of thing. So, but he would be a really good one. I'd love just to sit and talk about his journey from being cut from his high school team to, where he is now. And like the fact that his brand, he hasn't played a lick of basketball, I don't know how long, but that Jordan brand, my kid bought Jordans in Florida. I mean, well, we bought it, but he selected
Yeah.
Jordan shoes in Florida that were Hurricanes colors because that's his volleyball team. But it's just funny. So just to talk about the journey he went on, I mean, you've seen Air, you've seen the movies and stuff like that, but I'd love to hear it where it's kind of like uncensored from him over a pasta or a steak dinner or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and one or two is like, do you regret it? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all the, because I think guys like that, I think it's almost like by default, really, but they're so selfish to find out what they're capable of, but they're also like, without even realizing sometimes they're selfless enough to help empower their teammates, but it does come at a cost, right? I think it's because you're so passionate about your convictions and how dedicated you are that you feel probably everyone should be like you, especially when it's leading to success, right? It's like, hey, like it's working. If everyone's on the same page as me, then I think we'll be successful too. But it does come at a cost. I think if I was at that dinner with Michael Jordan too, I'd feel like, do you regret any of it? Like what? Like do you look back, be like, man, it cost me this, and this, and I wish it didn't. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because he failed too, right? Like he talks about failure a lot through his scenario, and obviously he learned from that. I mean, he went and tried baseball for a bit. Why did he really do that? Like, did he need to do that, or is because he was gambling and they kicked him out for a couple of years? Like that's going around on the dark web, I guess, type of thing. I don't know if that's true, but I'd love to sit there and chat with him. I don't know if he'd tell me, but it'd be interesting to kind of like just talk. Like you're the top of your game, you left to go play a different sport. What was that about? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Walk me through it, man. Like,
yeah. What's going on?
You got bored? Like, hey, you good?
Yeah.
That's
and then
crazy.
he came back and won 3 times again, and you're like, okay. So do you feel like you missed out on that year because you left, right? And like, what affected that? Like, maybe you could have had 7, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. No, that's a good one. I've seen all the movies and everything else. I remember like I was very, very young when he was still with the Bulls, but it was cool. I didn't like him when he went to Washington. Like, I'm sorry, it just wasn't.
That was tough, right? Because you're watching him, and he's still weird. Jacking up all these shots a game, and I'm sure he has an off-court leadership with the guys in that gym, for sure, because they're going to respect him. But I think wasn't he part owner of the team as well?
I think there was something there.
There was something there. Like, can you do that? Like, you can just own a team and be on. Okay, and I'm activating myself.
Yeah. Is he owner of the Hornets? Is he part of the Hornets organization? Oh, sorry, Bobcats.
I think he is. I think he is.
Yeah. I think that's
that would be cool. Like to be a owner of a professional sports team. Like that would be fantastic. Like
I'd ask him about that one too. Be like, how's it being an owner now? What do you deal with as being an owner now?
Yeah. Well, I saw something on YouTube like a while ago where I guess he jumped into a practice a few years ago in Charlotte and like took a guy one-on-one and beat him, like one of their best players.
That'd be so fucking cool.
Wouldn't it be cool to be there to see that? Be like,
that'd be so fucking cool.
In his 60s, right? Like, and he's schooling these 25-year-olds.
You're just competitive, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I think that competitive grind it is a learned skill. I don't think anyone's born tough or whatever like that. I think it's just honed. I think it's like anything else. It's just a honed skill, and you become so good at it that it's hard to do anything not to the best of your ability and just have like some pride on the line or something, whatever that.
I think those type of athletes or type of people are starting to become few and far between because everything's easier. We've made things now. We have AI. Everything's immediate gratification. Like I was talking to someone the other day. Like when I was a kid, we went outside. We played sports. That's where we got our dopamine. Like we we pretend we were Wayne Gretzky. We pretend we were Michael Jordan. We did all this stuff. We're John Elway. We're whoever we are, and that's where we got it from. Now I go into my son's room. He's got a game on with his friends where he's online. So he's got, the Minecraft or the Roblox or whatever he's got going. He's watching YouTube over here and he's got his Zoom call with his friends. So he's got 3 screens going to do this thing. Right. And I'm like, what's going on? And this is normal because this is what a lot of the kids are doing these days is they've got all of that going. And I'm like, I just had to go outside and throw a Frisbee. Like, what? I didn't get any of that. So now we can get our dopamine or our pleasure from so many different areas that we're not as competitive because we don't want it as bad anymore because we can find happiness in so many other places.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's just a weird. It's hard too because like I think it comes down to like are you able to even like relate to something like that? Like my experience was like the Brock wrestling room. Like Marty Calder was my coach for years, and I love the guy. He's like a father to me, And he was, in my opinion, one of the toughest guys I've ever met, and one of the most competitive guys I've ever met. And that was a big selling point for the program when he was even recruiting guys. Was he didn't have to really do, I don't think, he had to do too much recruiting because guys just knew like the archetype that fit there, and they were so successful. I think if my memory serves me correctly, Brock has the most national champions of any sport, at least from when I last checked. But it was because of like Richard, and then of course Marty and everything else, and they were just tough guys. But like, you're wondering like how, like why are they tough? Like define like the tough, and then
Right.
even coming out of high school and being recruited, and then talking to everyone, they're like, oh, like, I was talking with actually one of my teammates were on the podcast before too, and we're talking about like everyone would almost like say don't go to Brock because of how tough it was.
Mm.
But it was almost like, well, why? Like, what are you saying if it's too tough? Like, what do you mean it's too tough? And like, you don't think I can handle something like that? But you go in the room and it's like, whoa, like they're just so, everyone in that room was just so ultra competitive and about the stupidest shit. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows all the time. It was like dogs. It was like dogs going at each other. But it was like, that's kind of what formed that culture and that bond, was just the fact of, it wasn't matter if you're like on the mat fighting, or if you're playing handball, or if you're playing hockey or basketball, or just fucking playing cards, man. Guys were trying to fucking kick the shit out of you at whatever the hell they're trying to do for.
Right.
I don't even know. I can't even fathom or even guess where that came from. I think it was just, you just learn how to get the shit kicked out of you so much in anything. And then you just keep showing up again and again and again and again, to the point where you're just so used to it. Like there's no gratification, like you said, whatsoever. There's no dopamine effect because it's so delayed. You're just, but for some reason you keep showing up.
Right.
Like you're not getting anything out of it. You haven't won anything. You're still losing the same people. And at some point you might get closer. So there's that holding on. And then one point, like you might beat them by a little bit. And you're like, okay. So it's just so delayed. But I don't know if people have that same opportunity or if they have that same experience anymore. Just maybe it's just a generational thing. I don't really know, but
was the expectation when you were there that we're doing this to win a national championship? Like, was that the expectation?
No.
Was that talked about? Okay.
No, it was to win. It was to be a world team member.
Okay.
And that room, I think everyone in that room, I think it might be different because I think it wasn't just varsity guys. You had varsity guys and then club guys. So you had people that stuck around after varsity that were training now for the senior nationals and world teams or Olympics whenever cycle came around.
Yeah.
So you always had those guys and girls in the room. So it was almost, when I was there, it was almost like winning was expected. And domination was the goal. It wasn't good enough just to win. You had to demoralize your opponents to the point where they didn't want to be on the mat with you again. Right. If you got, you know what I mean? Like it was that, like if we would win the tournament, but if one guy got silver, guys would be looking like, you got silver. Eh? You know what I mean? Like it was just a different, I don't know what it was, but it was just so different. But and I don't think there's anything wrong with having that expectation. I think it's like, winning is winning, but that is what's expected of you. If you're on this team, you make varsity, like winning the OUAs or winning the CIS at the time, or U Sport now, is expected of you being a Brock wrestler, because your end goal is be a world team member, Olympic team member. And I think if you had that as your North Star, so to speak, you kind of just, you trained, acted accordingly, because you knew if that's what you truly strive for, and regardless if you got it or not, I think you funneled your process to prepare yourself for that. So then when you entered those tournaments like OUA or CIS, you competed and trained accordingly, like you're training and competing for the world team to face off against the Americans or the Russians or the Iranians or whomever. So, but that was just the room. And you had guys and girls that were living that, and they were around you, and you're training with them at the same time. So but I think that's what makes it so successful. And Marty he is the component of that. You know what I mean? Like he's like awesome dude, love him. Like I said, he's like a father figure to me, and I, still talk to this day, but he's just so competitive, and he really invests his time with his athletes in that regard. But that's also like a lost, I don't know if people are ready. I don't know if that's kind of shifted over the years now, where it's like you have to adapt your coaching style, because I don't think everyone's built that way anymore. Or maybe it's changed, or there's fewer people, like you said, fewer and far between, that resonate with that kind of expectation, that kind of coaching now. You know what I mean?
Well, if I were to tell my athletes in the gym, hey, we're all here to be part of the women's national team, they would look at me like I had 12 heads, because it's not what they want. But it's interesting to see that the goal for the wrestling program is to go one beyond a national championship. And like, no, we're talking about world championships. We're talking about Olympics. Like, this is what we're here to do. It must provide a really good level of accountability and motivation, right? Because you're not going to go compete with the best, but like, we're trying to compete with the best that are in Canada competing in our league. You guys are talking about the best in the world. That's what we're looking for, right? We're going to compete against them, right? Two different worlds, but it's definitely interesting.
No, it was again, not everyone's going to win nationals. There's only one guy, one girl for every weight class. But it was, even if
Right.
you fell top three, whatever like that, like that was, those things happen. But it was just the
Right.
approach and I guess the mindset, like you said, to how do you approach the steps to get to where you want to get to, regardless if
Yeah.
you get there or not. But
Yeah.
it's how you're training, it's how you're cutting weight, it's how you're going to school. It's like these are all just stepping stones to what would be, if you have it in your notebook or your mind, like I'm here to win the worlds,
Right.
regardless if you even win nationals. It's like, but you're kind of reorganizing your life and your process to fit that,
Hmm.
and then emulating what that looks like, and then by default you're winning these other things because of it, because that's
Yes.
just how you're prepared for it.
Right. And it
You know
must
what I
prepare
mean?
those athletes to have discipline in the other aspects of life as well. Because hey,
Huge.
if you can do all this, you know what I mean. And
Yeah,
that's why we get into sport originally, isn't it? To be
yeah.
have a better experience. I mean, we put our kids into sport so that they can learn from it, right? So I mean, that's a really big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and again, all the guys I've competed with during my time there were still close con. It's crazy. Guys who come from like Alberta and everything else, or Ottawa, whatever, and they still just live in Niagara now. So it's kind of cool to see
Right.
that. But they're all doing incredible things in their professional careers now too. But it's just because I think it's just parallels, right? If you're
Yeah.
competitive and you have that like unrelenting work ethic, that there's no gratification for, probably you don't even know when. You can't even pinpoint when it's going to happen, but you trust the process itself, and eventually something, you kind of, you water the plants and you'll reap the fruit later. That's just,
Sure.
but can enough people do that? And then of course when you go to professional, the professional career side of things, it just makes it that much. You've been there before. You know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
familiar. Like I know what this looks like. I know the struggle. I'm capable and confident that I can handle this again. And then eventually when it comes to fruition, you're like, you're not really surprised. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yep.
It's almost like there's a thirst you can't quench, just
For
because
sure.
it's just, you know what I mean? It's like a dog chasing a car or something. I don't really know. Maybe we're all just fucked in the head. Who knows?
Yeah. So those athletes
Maybe.
that do get to that world team, are they fulfilled once they get there, or then are they looking for the next level up?
I don't think we're ever fulfilled, man.
Yeah.
I don't think, you know what I mean? Like they reflect, I think we just went to the Badger Hall of Fame inductees, which was all wrestlers anyway. I think it was just a
Right.
wrestler event a couple weeks ago. But it's cool to hear them reflect on their journey, and they all they credited Marty for a lot of again the same thing.
Hmm.
And but it's cool to hear them reflect on how those things. They literally only talked about how they prepared them for life, whether they were competing in the '90s,
Hmm.
early 2000s. Like Evan McDonald got inducted into the Badger Hall of Fame. He was Olympian for 2004 in Athens. I think he was 22.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? He came out of the Brock program, and Tanya Rubik, probably know her.
Yep.
But they all reflected on how the training process paralleled into their career, and they reflect very fondly on those things too. But I don't think they're ever satisfied. I don't
Right.
think that's a bad thing. I don't think
Right.
that's a bad thing. I think that's what kind of, it keeps you engaged. You're not complacent, because it's a thirst you can't quench. Because even if you win CIS, you know what I mean? But then the next step, and if even if you win whatever at the world team, like there's always something. It's just like that thirst you can't quench, and then you're
Right.
never, not saying you're never satisfied. I'm not saying you can't reflect fondly on those things,
Yeah.
but I think if you just kind of, if you're just like, okay, I did it, this is good. I think it's like the peaks and valleys of wins and losing. You can't, you could visit, but you can't live there. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always something that's fucking, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
You're always chasing that next big thing. I've been guilty of that myself, where you're chasing that next big feeling or that moment, right? And if you spend
mhm.
a lot of your focus, chasing those moments, my question is, what moments are you missing in between?
Uh-huh.
Right? That's what I'm trying.
Ask Michael Jordan, man.
Yeah, I would. You got his number? I'll call him.
Yeah,
But
that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, what do you regret? Like, there's got to be something there. Like,
yeah,
you did all those things. It came at a cost. What did you miss it? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
for sure.
would someone say the same thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But no, like, if you ever get the chance to talk to Marty or have a beer with him, man,
Yeah,
he's fucking awesome to chat with outside
he's
the
great.
room. Like inside the room is a dog. Outside the
Yeah,
room, way better. But if you ever get the chance, like pick his brain on that shit. He's fucking
no, I will.
he's ferociously competitive.
We don't get to talk
Ferociously
enough,
competitive.
but he and I have chatted a few times, and usually it's about wrestling or something like that. I remember when the whole Foxcatcher thing came out with Kurt Angle. I'd watched that whole documentary and stuff.
Yeah, that was an
Asked him
interesting time.
a crazy time, and I was asking him about it because he would obviously would have known.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, my experience with Marty, he's a great guy. I'm admirable of what he's created at Brock. I'm obviously trying to get somewhere close to that. I'll never get to that, but it's awesome to see what he's done.
No, it's incredible. If you ever get the chance, yeah, pick his brain. He's
Yeah,
ferociously competitive, and again, success leaves clues, and like
sure,
it speaks for itself, right? You can respect the training process and the program that he's built over the years, and
for sure.
I think everyone that came out of that program has done pretty well. So,
Yeah,
um, Okay, we'll wrap things up there. I think I had one more fun question too. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, I remember what it was. We'll finish with this. What's one thing most people don't know about you?
Wow.
Boom.
Yeah, most people don't know. Well, I said the wrestling thing, so everybody knows that now. What's one thing most people don't know about me on the spot here? Yeah, I don't know. I was a high jumper in high school and won OFSA. I still hold a record to this day. In fact, it's been 30 years for the region of Peel. Because people look
Yeah,
at me, they're
man.
like, I got people looking at me, they're like, okay, wait, so you're 6'3", like 245 pounds. I mean, your jumping days are long gone, right? I'm like, yeah, but I was a volleyball player, and before that, I was a high jumper. So, that's probably,
Good transition.
yeah, it was decent because that's why I used to run the step off 1 foot a lot, and
Yeah.
not a lot of guys were doing that, especially as a left side hitter from position
Yeah.
four. And I say that to the girls now who hit the step or the rip as we call it. They're like, wait, you used to do that in position four, pass the ball, go away, and they're kind of like, why? And I'm like, I really don't know, but it worked. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That was cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Um, if listeners, let's say the recruits or athletes, if they want to know more about you or connect with you, where can they do that?
They can reach out to me on Instagram. It's SD Muppet is my thing. I don't know why I picked that.
Nice.
I also like the Muppets, but or they can email me, sdelaney@brockU.ca. Yeah,
Perfect. Simple.
yeah,
All right, guys.
yeah.
Thanks for joining
Cool.
into the Performance Matter podcast. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks, Coach, for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time.